Right, so today we're gonna dive deep into abortion access, right? Specifically in Kansas.
Okay.
You guys have sent us some really interesting stuff. A Reddit thread, which is pretty heated discussion sparked by a Raw Story article
Wow.
about skyrocketing abortion numbers in Kansas, and of course we've got the article itself.
Gotcha.
So we're gonna unpack what's happening there, why any of this should matter to you, and try to navigate all these different perspectives people have on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fascinating case study because, it feels like we're kind of looking through this magnifying glass at like the whole national abortion debate, right?
Yeah.
You get a really clear view of how legally complex this is, the human impact, all these different viewpoints, on this super charged topic. It's
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
hit the nail on the head. Like, our mission today is to help you guys sort of wade through all this. We're going way beyond just the headlines. Like, we're going to get into the data and really explore all these different angles.
definitely. And speaking of data, the Raw Story article, like right off the bat,
Yeah.
hits you with this really kind of shocking stat, which is a 58% jump in abortions in Kansas just this year.
Whoa.
Like massive leap from 12,319 in 2022 to 19,467 in 2023.
Wow. Okay, those numbers are really eye-opening.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get caught up in the statistics, but we have to remember that we're talking about real people making these life-altering decisions,
Absolutely.
And the article, it makes it very clear that this isn't just some random spike, This is directly tied to the overturning of Roe v. Wade and then those near total abortion bans in all these neighboring states like Missouri, Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's almost like you're seeing this like chain reaction, right? When women can't access abortion care in their own states,
Right.
they're forced to travel to states like Kansas where it's still legal. So this whole abortion tourism phenomenon is really taking shape.
In tourism.
And to put some numbers on that, 15,111 of those abortions in 2023 performed on people who don't even live in Kansas.
It's fascinating, and it makes me think about some of those comments in the Reddit thread. Like, people were really concerned about the impact on women with lower incomes.
Yep.
Like, one person said, driving to another state can be hard when you have a lower income, really highlights that privilege of being able to travel for healthcare.
Absolutely. You're so right. The cost of travel, accommodations, time off work, it creates this massive barrier for a lot of women. And it makes you wonder, is this even really equitable access to healthcare if only some people can afford it?
It's a great question. Really makes you question the whole system. And speaking of the system, the article kind of dives into this legal back and forth that's happening in Kansas, which feels like this, miniature version of the national battle over abortion rights.
It really is. And, Kansas actually has this kind of unique legal history when it comes to abortion. Their state Supreme Court has been a really strong defender of abortion rights.
Okay.
They struck down certain anti-abortion laws. They even defeated an amendment that would restricted access.
So it sounds like they've had some wins for the pro-abortion rights side.
Yeah, they have, but there's this undercurrent of fear, right? Remember
Right.
those comments in the Reddit thread. People are worried about a national ban, looming on the horizon.
Yeah, and you can feel that fear in their comments. Like, one person even wrote, "Get ready, ladies, Jan 2025 abortion is banned in the whole U.S."
Yeah.
It's kind of unsettling to think about that potentially becoming reality for so many people. No wonder there's so much tension around this whole issue.
Right. And, that fear is amplified by what's happening literally right next door to Kansas.
Yeah.
The article mentions Missouri and Oklahoma. They've got these near total bans. Nebraska's got a 12-week ban. Iowa's 6 weeks.
Wow.
So Kansas is surrounded by states with these incredibly restrictive laws.
It's like they're holding their breath, waiting to see if or when that spreads.
Yeah.
Can you remind us where Kansas stands right now legally with abortion? The article mentioned a 22-week limit. But can you break that down for anyone who's not super familiar with the legalese?
Sure. So essentially, in Kansas, abortion is legal up to 22 weeks of pregnancy.
Okay.
And that's crucial because after 22 weeks, the fetus is generally considered viable, meaning it could survive outside the womb.
Yeah.
So that 22-week mark, it's kind of become this dividing line in the legal landscape of abortion.
Okay, that's helpful context.
Yeah.
So with this 22-week limit, Kansas is offering significantly more access than a lot of its neighbors, which makes you think about all the different opinion and perspectives that must exist on this,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely. And the article actually brings in a voice from the anti-abortion movement to
Yeah.
highlight that. Danielle Underwood, she represents Kansas for Life. She argues that this surge in abortions, it doesn't actually reflect what most Kansans want.
Hmm.
And she's worried that vulnerable women are being exploited by what she calls the abortion industry.
Okay, that's a powerful statement, and you definitely hear that sentiment echoed across the country. And I think it's really important to try to understand that perspective, even if you might not agree with it personally.
I completely agree. This isn't about like shutting down viewpoints you don't agree with.
Right.
It's about understanding the full spectrum of this whole debate, but it's also equally important to consider the counter arguments.
Yeah.
And those are definitely present in that Reddit discussion.
Oh, yeah. There were so many passionate voices in that thread.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people were really worried about things like women's autonomy, the disproportionate impact this has on women with limited finances,
Yeah.
and then the potential risks to women's health if safe and legal abortion is harder to access.
Yeah, one comment that really stuck with me said, it's life or death now for women in states with these super restrictive abortion laws.
Wow.
It's a sobering reminder that we're not just debating like concepts here.
Right.
We're talking about real lives, real consequences.
You're absolutely right. It's this powerful reminder that these decisions, they have a huge impact on people's lives.
Yeah,
And it sort of takes us beyond the statistics and the legal battles and into the realm of human experience.
exactly. And the article gives us this like detail to kind of help put a face on the data.
Okay.
It mentions that 85% of the women who had abortions in Kansas in 2023 were unmarried.
That's interesting. Do you think that tells us anything about like societal pressures, or is it too soon to even go there?
It's tough to say for sure without, more investigation, but it definitely raises some intriguing questions, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
is there a stigma around unmarried mothers in certain communities? Are there like economic factors at play?
Yeah.
It just gives you a little glimpse into the complexities of these decisions people are facing.
Yeah, I see your point.
Yeah.
And it also ties into this broader trend that the article mentions. Kansas had its lowest live birth rate since 1912, just this year.
Wow.
That's a pretty crazy statistic.
That is wild.
I never would have connected that to the abortion rate.
It is striking, right?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if there's a correlation there, like between access to abortion and birth rates.
Yeah.
And that Reddit discussion was full of people wrestling with these big questions.
Oh, yeah. They were not holding back. Like, some of those questions really get to the heart of this whole debate. Like, will blue states resist a national abortion ban? Should citizens have the right to directly vote on abortion access?
Yeah, those are questions that deserve some serious consideration.
Yeah.
We're talking about way more than just individual choices here.
Right.
We're talking about the future of our society. And I think what's so compelling about this whole deep dive is that we're literally watching history unfold in real time.
It's definitely a lot to process, but it's also a reminder of why it's so important to stay informed and to consider different viewpoints and to grapple with these complex issues. We can't just bury our heads in the sand and pretend these things aren't happening.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
we have to be active participants in shaping the future that we want to see.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to keep exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
It's kind of wild how this one issue, abortion access, brings up so many different emotions.
Right.
Like fear, anger, hope, despair. It's really intense.
Yeah. It is. It is. And it's easy to get swept up in all that, but I
Right.
think it's important to kind of take a step back and try to see it from all sides, even the ones that maybe make us a little uncomfortable.
Totally agree with that. And that's why those Reddit comments are so valuable. They give us this like raw glimpse into what people are actually worried about, what they're hoping for.
Yeah.
Like one person brought up this crazy idea that Texas could actually sue New York for selling abortion pills.
Whoa. Texas trying to control what happens in another state.
Right. It just highlights how these legal fights could easily spill over state borders.
Yeah.
What starts as a small case somewhere could set this huge precedent for the whole country.
Right. Right.
That's why we got to pay attention to even the seemingly minor stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Another comment that kind of stuck with me was, Everyone, get your passports updated and get an emergency credit card with a big enough limit to fly to Canada.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad that people are feeling so desperate that leaving the country is an option just to get health care.
It really does show how much fear and desperation is out there,
Yeah.
and it makes you realize the privilege of even having that choice.
Right.
Not everyone can just up and move to another country.
It's true. It makes you think about all the things we take for granted, like the ability to travel, have financial resources. Not everyone has that.
Exactly.
And it brings us back to that idea of equity we were talking about. Like, who actually has access to safe abortion and who's getting left behind?
Yeah, that's the core question we need to keep asking as things change. And it's not just about abortion either.
Right.
It ties into bigger issues like social justice, economic inequality, healthcare disparities.
It's almost like this whole debate has become this, like, lightning rod for all these other anxieties and tensions in society,
It
right?
really has.
It's not just about abortion itself. It's about power, about control, about who gets to make choices about their own bodies and lives.
Exactly. And it's interesting that the article brings in a bit of historical context.
Yeah.
It mentions that the abortion rate for Kansas residents in 2023 was actually lower than it was back in 2004.
Really? That's surprising with all this talk about the surge.
Right. It shows there's more to the story than just Roe v. Wade being overturned.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that this is a complex issue with a long, complicated past. We can't just look at the present without considering all the historical trends and different factors involved.
Okay, so what kind of factors might have contributed to that decline between 2004 and, say, 2021? Like, could it be things like better access to contraception or sex education or even just changing societal attitudes?
It's probably a mix of all those things and maybe some we haven't even considered.
Yeah.
The point is, it's not simple. There are lots of influences that have shaped these trends over time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that complexity shows up in the Reddit discussion too. People trying to wrap their heads around the data, figure out what it all means for the future.
Yeah, one comment that really resonated with me said, almost like women will get abortions whether they're legal or not. I wonder what route they'll take if it was nationally banned. Kind of a chilling thought, but it makes you realize that just because you restrict access doesn't mean the demand goes away.
Exactly, and that brings up the whole issue of unsafe abortions, which historically have been a major public health problem.
Yeah.
When safe and legal options disappear, people sometimes resort to desperate measures, and that can be really dangerous.
It is a sobering thought. Makes you question the ethics of it all. Are we actually putting women's health and well-being first, or are we just pushing agendas regardless of the consequences?
That's a question we all need to be asking as a society,
Yeah.
honestly and thoughtfully.
Right.
We need to engage with different opinions, listen to people's experiences, and really consider the impact of our actions.
Okay, I think it's time to zoom out a bit and look at some of those bigger picture questions that came up in both the article and the Reddit thread. One that really got me thinking was, will blue states resist a national abortion ban?
Ah, the million-dollar question, and one that could have massive consequences for the future of abortion access across the country.
Definitely. It brings up that whole debate about states' rights versus federal power. We've seen some pushback from states on other issues, so it'll be fascinating to see how this plays out.
The legal side of things is constantly shifting, with court decisions, new laws being passed.
Right.
It's like a legal chess match, everyone trying to outmaneuver each other.
And while they're doing that, real people's lives are hanging in the balance. It's not just some abstract legal argument. It affects individuals and communities nationwide.
Right, and that urgency was definitely present in those Reddit comments.
Oh, yeah.
One person said, it'll be interesting to see how blue states respond to a national ban. I fully expect places like California, New York, Vermont to just say, nope, not happening, and tie it up in court forever.
Yeah, you can sense that defiance, that resistance in some parts of the country. And it kind of paints this picture of a divided nation with different states almost operating under different laws when it comes to reproductive rights.
It's a scenario that could make our political and cultural divides even worse.
Yeah.
It raises questions about the very foundation of our democracy, the balance of power between the federal government and individual states. It's tough to predict where it all goes.
Really makes you wonder about the long-term impact on society as a whole.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Another question that popped up on Reddit was whether citizens should have the power to directly vote on abortion access in their states.
That's a really interesting one.
It is, right? Gets to the heart of democracy and how people can shape policy.
Yeah, we've already seen this play out in Kansas, remember? Voters actually rejected that amendment to restrict abortion.
Yeah.
It shows that public opinion isn't always so clear-cut, and direct democracy can lead to different outcomes than what politicians might choose.
Absolutely. It also makes you think about the role of the courts in protecting basic rights. Like, even if most voters in a state support restricting abortion, does that automatically mean those rights should be taken away? Or are there some rights that deserve protection, even if they're not popular?
That's a debate philosophers and legal experts have been having for ages.
Right.
It's a conversation we need to have as a society, especially in this increasingly polarized world.
It's a debate that's probably going to get even more heated in the next few years.
Yeah, for sure. And the Reddit thread captured that intensity perfectly. People on both sides arguing passionately.
Absolutely. Like, one person was saying that lawmakers need to represent the will of the people. So if the majority supports abortion access, then that should be reflected in the laws.
Right.
Another person was frustrated that the issue wasn't put to a direct vote in their state. They want more say in these big decisions.
It's clear there are no easy answers. This debate will probably continue for generations.
You know, what's interesting is that the Reddit conversation didn't just stay on the legal and political side of things. People were also talking about the economic impact of these bans.
That's a crucial point that often gets missed. There's more and more research showing that these bans can have serious economic effects, both for individual women and for whole states.
Right. One comment even asked, like, why doesn't anyone report on the money side of this? How much is Kansas gaining? And how much are other states losing because of these bans? It's not just healthcare, it's about economic opportunity, jobs, the financial well-being of entire communities.
You got it. And the Reddit thread got into some of those potential impacts.
Yeah.
Someone pointed out that states with bans might see more demand for social safety net programs because women forced to carry unwanted pregnancies could face bigger financial struggles.
That makes sense.
Another person talked about brain drain, like skilled workers choosing to move to states with more reproductive freedom.
Right. So it's not just about abortion itself. It creates this ripple effect that touches everything: families, communities, even state economies.
Absolutely. It shows that these policy choices have consequences we need to think about carefully.
What strikes me about this whole deep dive is that it's not just about numbers and data. It's about people's stories, ethical questions, the very core of what it means to be a free and equal citizen in a democracy.
It's about wrestling with complex issues, challenging our own beliefs, and having real conversations, even when it's tough.
And realizing that these things aren't going away, they'll continue to shape our society and our lives for years to come.
Yeah, it's almost overwhelming to think about, the ripple effect that'll have on the future. Like, what kind of world are we creating for our kids and grandkids?
It's a lot to think about, but it's also a reminder that we can actually do something about it. You know, we have to get involved, learn, and fight for the future we want.
You know what really impressed me about that Reddit thread was the sense of community. Like, even with all the disagreements,
Yeah.
people were actually listening to each other, offering support, sharing resources. It's a good reminder that even on tough issues like this,
Yeah.
there's still room for empathy, for connection.
Mm.
Definitely. It gives me hope, too,
Yeah.
Even while we're figuring things out, we can still be there for each other and work towards something better.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, united we stand, divided we fall.
Right.
And right now, finding that common ground and working together to protect women's rights and well-being feels more important than ever.
I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah.
And it's really encouraging that the Reddit folks actually talked about solutions, too.
Yeah.
Like, someone shared a link to a list of doctors who do sterilizations, recognizing that might be the best choice for some women, given all the legal stuff.
Right.
Another person talked about supporting groups that help women afford abortions, recognizing those financial hurdles.
It's inspiring to see people taking action, doing whatever they can to make things better, even when it feels so huge,
Yeah.
It makes me want to find ways to contribute, too, whether it's volunteering, donating, even just talking about these issues with people.
Absolutely. Everything helps. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's worth going back to that 58% jump in Kansas, that statistic we started with.
Yeah, that number is hard to forget. It's a powerful reminder that all this policy stuff has real consequences for people's lives.
But it also shows how resilient women are. They're fighting for control over their bodies, over their futures.
Absolutely.
It's amazing to see that strength and determination.
Even in the face of all this, there's this incredible push for change.
Yeah.
And it's up to all of us to decide, what role we want to play in shaping the future of reproductive rights.
That's right. So as we finish up, we really encourage you all to think about Everything we talked about.
Yeah.
Talk to your friends, your family, keep researching, keep the conversation going.
What stood out to you? What questions are you left with?
Because the future of reproductive rights, it's in our hands.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.